The United States military is currently executing a massive bombing campaign against Iranian targets. It is the world's most heavily funded superpower going head-to-head with a nation that has been isolated by severe economic sanctions for decades. Look at the defense budgets, and this conflict should wrap up in a matter of hours. Yet Iran is not collapsing. They are actively pushing back and neutralizing some of the most advanced technology the American military possesses. In the course of this conflict, a highly advanced American radar system, a piece of technology that cost $300 million to build, was completely wiped out by an Iranian counterattack. How does a country cut off from global trade build a military strategy so resilient that the combined weight of the U.S. armed forces cannot dismantle it? To figure out how this trap works, we have to ignore the aircraft carriers. We need to look at the raw math, the local geography, and a defense doctrine born entirely out of historical paranoia. Counting fighter jets and naval fleets tells us nothing about how this fight actually plays out on the ground. Iran has spent decades watching the U.S. military topple governments across the Middle East. From Iraq to Libya, the lesson was obvious. Trying to fight the American military in a traditional head-to-head conventional war guarantees your own destruction. So Iran built a two-part survival strategy. First, pursue nuclear deterrence to keep foreign armies out. Second, engineer a conventional defense system designed specifically to make an invasion financially ruinous for anyone who tries. The foundation of that defense is physical. Along its borders, particularly in the west, Iran is guarded by massive, rugged terrain, like the Zagros Mountains, acting as a towering natural fortress against ground invasions. Iran weaponized these mountains by hollowing them out. They buried interconnected missile cities and drone launch pads deep underground, shielding their offensive capabilities beneath millions of tons of solid rock. From these bunkers, Iran deploys the core of its offensive strategy: massive swarms of cheap, highly expendable suicide drones. This chart shows the severe financial math of the conflict. An Iranian drone costs roughly $2,000 to produce. But to stop that single drone, the United States relies on systems like the Patriot interceptor, which costs upwards of $4 million per missile. Iran's tactical goal is not to win a traditional shootout. Their goal is to force the U.S. into a math problem it cannot solve, bleeding the American defense budget dry through extreme cost asymmetry. A standard tactic in modern warfare is the decapitation strike, taking out a country's generals to collapse their command structure. But eliminating top military leadership does not paralyze Iran. Knowing they were vulnerable to these strikes, Iran implemented the Mosaic Doctrine. They decentralized their military into 31 independent provincial commands. If central command is destroyed, local commanders are pre-authorized to step up, make autonomous decisions, and launch counterstrikes. Beyond its borders, Iran leverages its geography in another way. It uses neighboring U.S. allies, like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as human shields. The U.S. launches many of its regional attacks from military bases located inside these Gulf nations. In response, Iran has made an explicit threat to target those host countries' highly sensitive desalination plants. These are desert nations. They rely on desalination plants to process ocean water into roughly 60% of their daily drinking water. If a $2,000 drone hits one of these facilities, the damage takes months, sometimes over a year, to rebuild. The U.S. military finds itself strategically paralyzed. Using its regional bases to protect its own interests risks triggering an immediate, catastrophic water and food crisis for its closest allies in the Middle East. The final piece of this asymmetrical strategy sits directly in the water. Iran holds absolute geographic control over the Strait of Hormuz. This map highlights the physical bottleneck. It is a narrow 33-kilometer stretch of water, and every day, roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply is forced to navigate through it. Iran does not need a massive naval fleet to sink every tanker passing through. They only need to strike one. The moment a single vessel is destroyed, global shipping insurance companies panic, rates skyrocket, and the flow of oil through the strait halts entirely. Halting that specific flow of Gulf oil strikes a critical blow directly to the foundation of the U.S. economy, the petrodollar system. American economic dominance relies on an arrangement where Gulf nations sell their oil exclusively in US dollars and then reinvest those massive dollar reserves into US Treasury bonds. When the oil stops moving, the global demand for the dollar freezes with it. Iran has engineered an impenetrable trap. They have created a battlefield where the only way for the United States to secure a military victory is to trigger a global energy crisis and risk collapsing its own currency in the process.